everyone, welcome to Caterpillar ASMR. Today's video is one that I hope relaxes you, at least relaxes you, quells your anxiety a bit, and ideally I hope it knocks you out and helps you get some sleep if that's what you're here for. It is a classic we'll start to read. It is by Jane Austen and it is called Northanger Abbey. It was written in 1803 but not she shirked her lessons in both whenever she could. What a strange, unaccountable character. For with all these symptoms of profligacy, at 10 years old, she had neither a bad heart nor a bad temper, was seldom stubborn, scarcely ever quarrelsome, and very kind to the little ones, with few interruptions of tyranny. She was, moreover, noisy and wild, hated confinement and cleanliness, and loved nothing so well as in the world as rolling down the green slope in the back of the house. Such was Catherine Morland at 10. At 15, appearances were mending. She began to curl her hair and long for balls. Her complexion improved, her features were softened by plumpness of color, and her eyes gained more animation, and her figure more consequence. Her love of dirt gave way to an inclination for finery, and she grew clean as she grew smart. And she had now the pleasure of sometimes hearing her father and mother remark on her personal improvement. Catherine grows quite a good-looking girl. She is almost pretty today, were words which caught her ears now and then. And how welcome were the sounds. To look almost pretty is an acquisition of higher delight to a girl who has been looking plain the first 15 years of her life than a beauty from the cradle can ever receive. Mrs. Morland was a very good woman. She wished to see her children, everything they ought to be, but her time was so much occupied in lying in and teaching the little ones that her elder daughters were inevitably left to shift for themselves, and it was not very wonderful that Catherine, who had by nature nothing heroic about her, should prefer cricket, baseball, riding on horseback, and running about the country at the age of 14 to books, or at least books of information, for, provided that nothing like useful knowledge could be gained from them, provided they were all story and no reflection, she had never any objection to books at all. But from 15 to 17 she was in training for a heroine. She read all such works as heroines must read, to supply their memories with those quotations which are so serviceable and soothing in the vicissitudes of their eventful lives. So far her improvement was sufficient, and in many other points she came on exceedingly well, for though she could not write sonnets, she brought herself to read them, and though there seemed no chance of her throwing a whole party into raptures by a prelude on the pianoforte of her own composition, she could listen to other people's performance with very little fatigue. Her greatest deficiency was in the pencil. She had no notion of drawing, not enough to even attempt a sketch of her lover's profile, that she might be detected in the design. There she fell miserably short of the true heroic height. At present she did not know her own poverty, for she had no lover to portray. She had reached the age of 17 without having seen one amiable youth who could call forth her sensibility. Without having inspired one real passion, without having excited even any admiration, but what was very moderate and very transient. This was strange indeed, but strange things may be generally accounted for if their cause can be fairly searched out. There was not one family among their acquaintance who had reared and supported a boy accidentally found at their door, not one young man whose origin was unknown. Her father had no ward, and the squire of the and she entertained no notion of their general mischievousness, and was wholly unsuspicious